Check 1, 2. All right, we good? We good? Great, that's what I love to hear. All right, folks. Here we are, folks. We're ready. Gonna give it a minute. Gonna give a few more people some time to come in. Then we're gonna talk a little bit some Eagles. We're gonna talk a little bit about the Pro Football Hall of Fame. We got the list of nominees all set up for who could potentially be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I mean, because the nominees are out, so we got them on list. So we gonna go through that real quickly, and then from there, all right, we're gonna go from there. All right, so let's give it another minute. Let's give it one more minute. Let's see what's up. Give you guys time to come in. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up a list. It's a list of guys that are nominees for the Pro Football Hall of Fame in the year 2026. I'm going to review them. I'm going to talk a little bit about Tom Brady as an announcer. So we'll give it another minute or so, folks. Give some people some more time to come on in. And we'll just go from there. So folks, give it a minute. Give it a minute. Minute. All right. So all right. All right, we're going to start off. I'm going to talk about Tom Brady as an announcer first because Tom Brady, it's been getting on a lot. A lot of people have been talking about it, and I noticed it yesterday as I'm watching the Eagles-Bucs game, particularly right after the block punt return for a touchdown by Sidney Brown. The subject of the Eagles' special teams came up. And what happened was Tom Brady turned the subject of special teams into his days about the Patriots. We had a great special teams coach, rah. And I started thinking about, I'm like, oh man, this is why I'm not sold on Tom Brady as an announcer, because when he does announce, oftentimes he just babbles on about himself. And yeah, it happened again, folks. Here he was babbling on about himself, about how he's done this or that, and how he, and I've noticed it a lot. Like when he talks about different formations, he'll start going on talking about himself, talking about how back in my day we did this, back in my day it was yada yada yada. And you start thinking to yourself, oh boy, here we go again. Tom Brady talking about himself, just endlessly yapping on about how great he is, and this and that. It's just like, no thank you, Tom. I don't really care about your days, how we did it back in your days. You ran this formation. He goes into specifics about plays that they used to run. It's just like, look, Tom, if you want to talk about all that, dude, you got to get your own podcast, because, look, people really ain't interested in hearing you gabble on about back in my day. Nah. Tom, cut it out, all right? We'll just get it. Just tell us what we need to hear. Just tell us the details about the game, all right? Because you notice that the difference between... Because I'm like, look, he should just have his own podcast, for real. Because Tom Brady spends so much time just babbling on about himself. It just be... Oh, it's ridiculous, dude. It really is. I just don't... Does anyone really care for it? And I noticed, too, a lot of people I hear talk to personally, a lot of people talking online, they all saying the same thing. they all saying that, man, Tom Brady is a terrible announcer, bro. I can't stand listening to this guy. And that's become the new norm. That's become the thing. Yeah, people don't want to hear what you got to say, Tom, because you just, at this point, you become real obnoxious and just real self-centered. And you hear them just going on about the plays they run, but it'd be like, yo, dude, talk about the game. You're not getting paid to talk about your experiences. If you want to have I think Tom Brady should have a podcast where he tells stories from his career. That would be perfect, because then Brady can go on that podcast. He can babble all he wants to about this, that, and the third, and that would be perfect for him. You don't have to worry about boring people to death with your stories about how awesome your career was. You just come on there. You can just come on there and just, shoot the shot about his career. It would actually make more interesting, too, because it would be far more interesting. People would actually want to hear what you got to say if he talked about in his own podcast. So I think that would be much better. He should maybe have his own show, kind of similar to Omaha Productions, what Peyton Manning's doing, because that's perfect, because Peyton can tell stories, they can crack jokes. It's kind of like what we do on YouTube with our live streams, but on ESPN Plus with Peyton Manning. That's perfect, because then he can just go on there, do something similar, and that's what works great. But when you're on Fox Sports doing this, people are expecting you to go on TV and actually provide in-depth analysis of the game. They're providing you commentary with the game. Especially with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you would think that'd be perfect for him. Brady could give you some insight about the Buccaneers, about some of the players there that he's played with, and you would think, oh man, that'd be perfect for Brady, but just for whatever reason, he's not interested. He's more interested in talking about himself. We can clearly see it. Like, he's obviously far more focused on his own stories, which, I mean, look, that's fine if you want to talk about yourself, but dude, like I said, get that own podcast. Because when it comes down to the games, like, you compare him to Tony Romo or Troy Aikman. I mean, for the longest time, we used to give flack to Tony Romo. Well, not Tony Romo, but Troy Aikman for working with Joe Buck, and say that Aikman was kind of a generic announcer. But you know what? Let's be real. I would take Troy Aikman over Tom Brady as an announcer, because at least when it comes down to it, he's going to talk about the games. You're actually going to hear Tom Brady go out there and actually try to talk about the games. Not Tom Brady, sorry. Troy Aikman at least tries to talk about the players and the teams involved in the game. Now, he's not that great at it, especially when you compare him to, say, a Tony Romo. Now, Romo, I'll say this. Well, we're still on that subject. Now, you compare Troy Aikman to Tony Romo. Romo is a better announcer, because he at least tries to talk about the game. He at least tries to get you emotionally invested. At least tries to talk about the teams involved. And that's something I at least appreciate as a fan. But, now on the other hand, because Romo, you listen to him, he'll actually try to talk about the teams, the game, the plays that just happened. You at least see an effort to say, hey, here's what happened on this previous play. You see so-and-so make a spin move off tackle, and they're able to bring the heat quickly, forcing quarterback to get rid of the ball. Like, you actually see some attempt to actually provide analysis of the games, the point I'm getting. I know that wasn't the best example, but I hope that illustrates the point enough. Like, at least with Romo, you hear with the game. Now, you see Hurts, he moves back, he senses pressure, but with a quick quarterback like Hurts, the benefit to is he knows how to get out of trouble and use his feet to make a play. He rolls to his right to get away from the heat. At the last second, he sees A.J. Brown open. He throws the ball, delivers a dagger to A.J. Brown, And AJ makes the catch and does the rest and gets a first down for the Eagles. At least with Tony Romo, you'll get something along those lines. Whereas Brady will just be like, hey, when I was playing, yada, 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 yada. It's like, dude, we don't want to hear it. We don't want to hear you talk about, this and that. It'd just be boring us. I'm sorry, bro, but it'd be boring us to death. It's like, dude, just shush. Talk about the game, Tom Brady. We don't care about your stories while we're watching the game. We're trying to listen to a football game. Now, if you want to have a podcast, like I said, by all means, go for it then. I really think that would be a great idea. But, Tom, somebody should have gave Tom Brady the heads up, like, look. And I'm curious, did this guy have an audition or something to get the announcer role? Did somebody say, all right, let's give this guy an audition, see how he can do, see if he's qualified to be an announcer first, or they just say, okay, Tom Brady's got the name recognition, put him out there, let's see what happens. Like, I think, and I'm really convinced that's what they did, because I don't buy that Tom Brady one bit. I am not sold on the fact that he went out there and actually was given a proper audition. Either that or he did get an audition and he managed to fake it for the audition, probably stayed on subject there, had a nice little audition, he probably did his thing there, but I am not convinced one bit that he did a proper audition. I'm sorry, because it's like, yeah, but dude, I don't want to hear Tom Brady announce there. That's really what I'm coming to right now. Because I listen to him, I'm just hearing him, I'm like, go on and on about his own plays and his formations. I'm like, dude, this is not what they're paying you for. Now, Tony Romo, like I said, I'll take a Tony Romo or a Troy Aikman, because at least with them, there's an effort to talk about the games, talk about the participants in it. Because at least there, they at least trying to get the fans involved, trying to get people to care about the game, like guy said, because that's really what all the great announcers do. Sometimes, in some regards, they tell a story about the game. They talk about similar situations to the one on the field or on the court or on the ice or whatever the case may be. But in this case, I'm just like, dude, look, Tom Brady's just not suited to be an announcer, all right? Early on, that first year he was there, I'm like, all right. I remember the first game I listened to him, that Browns-Cowboys week 1 last year. I'm like, he don't got it. But at the same time, I'm like, all right, it's his first game as an announcer. Let me give it a pass. And here's another thing, too, you got to consider. With Troy Aikman, at least when Aikman was an announcer, he had some experience. He did the NFL Europe games during the offseason. David, what is up? What is up? Thanks for stopping by. Hope you're having a great morning. At least with Troy Aikman, he did start as an announcer for NFL Europe. So he at least had some experience under his belt before he just went out there and just went out there and just started announcing for the pros. At least Troy Aikman had some experience. He did the NFL Europe games. And another one was Donovan McNabb, if you guys remember. Donovan McNabb did NFL Europe as well. I'm surprised they didn't try out Donovan McNabb as a commentator. But then again, maybe with his off-the-field issues post-retirement, with his alcohol and drug-related issues, maybe that's why they don't want him as an announcer. Maybe they don't trust him to show up to work. So that could be a factor, too. That could be. But at least with those guys, they at least try to get you involved in the game. They at least try. But I don't see that effort being made with Tom Brady. I just feel like, look, I'm not interested in hearing him announce. I'll put it that way. I'd rather hear Buck and Aikman on Monday nights because at least with Joe Buck, he has gotten better at it recently. Like, he's actually stepped up his game recent years. He actually tries to get more emotionally invested. So Joe Buck, I at least say this, he's gotten better as the years have gone along. I still don't think he's great, but at least in recent years, you listen to Joe Buck, you hear, all right, he's at least trying with his commentary. He's at least trying to go out there and tell a story with his commentary. He's at least trying to get, he's at least trying to get the crowd emotionally involved or the audience. I mean, granted, like you've heard, like the New England, like you've seen a few times, like the Stephon Diggs catch, miracle in Minneapolis. He actually tried to tried to get the audience invested. With the Diggs, at least effort. You saw the New England Atlanta touchdown, what a comeback. But he said it with enthusiasm. It wasn't like the old Plexico Burris touchdown or the David Tyree helmet catch where he was monotone. In recent years, you've at least seen Joe Buck try to get more emotionally invested. So at this point, I'd rather take Joe Buck in his current form over Tom Brady. Even though I'm still not a fan of him, I'd still take even an Al Michaels or Mike Tirico or Jim Nantz over them. I would still take those guys, but even Joe Buck, I still think is better than Tom Brady in his current stage. At least he's tried to get better at announcing. So that's where I leave it at there when it comes to announcing. But moving on just a second, we're going to switch gears. We're going to talk about the Pro Football Hall of Fame. The nominees were just dropped recently. So we going to see, so I'm going to look into it right there. I actually copied and pasted the full list from my screen. And I'm going to show it to you guys and I'm not going to show it to you. I'm going to pull it up. I'm going to look at it myself and decide. So give me one moment. So I got the full list of Pro Football Hall of Fame nominees, the potential nominees for the 2026 Hall of Fame. So I'm going to look at it, give you guys my thoughts, let you know who I think could be. Just a minute, because I saw some of the names I'm looking at. I'm like, all right, maybe some of these guys could be cut out. Maybe some of these guys not so much. All right, just 1 second. But I'm looking at like quarterback. I saw some of the names. I'm like, hell no, not this guy. This guy, okay, maybe. This guy, maybe. This guy, okay. But not this guy. So I'm like, all right, so let's pull this up, take a look. So we got quarterbacks. Some of the nominees are Drew Brees. I'm sure he'll be the one that gets in for sure. Randall Cunningham. I think Randall Cunningham might eventually get in, but it might be a wait. Jake Delhomme, I'm like, no. I'm not feeling that at all. Not no Jake Delhomme. I mean, he was a solid quarterback with the Panthers. He had a few good seasons, but I'm not sold on Jake Delhomme being a Hall of Famer. Hall of Famers reserved for the best quarterbacks. Well, Jake Delhomme had a few good seasons. We never saw him as a top quarterback. Because you go back to that mid-2000s era. Ask yourselves, who did you consider the top quarterbacks of that era? You consider Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, of course. Drew Brees started to work his way into that category. You could even say, when healthy, Donovan McNabb. You look around, you could see those guys. You could even say, at that era, somebody like Ben Roethlisberger, when he broke out, was a top quarterback in that era. Even Eli was had flashes at times, but the guys I listed were guys, like I said, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Drew Brees worked his way into that category. Ben Roethlisberger had himself a really good, especially after that strong rookie season. He solidified himself very early on as a top quarterback. You even had other guys in there too that were still considered, like even Michael Vick to some degree, was kind of that lower tier franchise quarterback. Maybe not as good as the other guys in the name, but Michael Vick was kind of a more worthy candidate. Even Eli to some degree, you figured if he just kept it together. We never really thought of, oh, Jake Delhomme, he must be one of those guys. At one point, a top 10, yes, but never a top 5. Hell, Matt Hasselbeck was even considered more of an elite quarterback than Jake Delhomme. So I'm not sold on Jake Delhomme whatsoever. Next one after that is Rich Gannon, Rich Gannon he had a really good run for the Raiders for a couple years there, but at the same time, when it comes to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, I look at his career as a whole. Rich Gannon spent most of his career as a journeyman. He was toiling around from team to team. He found the right fit late with the Raiders, and to his credit, he had 3 really good seasons with them, including 1 regular season MVP. But if you take away those 3 seasons, woe is Rich Gannon's career truly. Gannon and David put Philip Rivers is better than Delhomme. Oh, absolutely. There's another one. And the reason I didn't say Philip Rivers in that list is because Rivers didn't start till 06. That was kind of like the end of the midpoint of the decade. 04-05, Rivers was still a backup. But yeah, when you look at their all-around careers, yes, Philip Rivers was better than Jake Delhomme for sure. I was talking about guys that were considered better, that were starters during Jake Delhomme's peak in the mid-2000s, such as Big Ben, Peyton, Tom Brady, and those guys. But yes, Philip Rivers as well. And Rich Gannon, like I said, you take away those 3 years, he didn't have a good enough career to be a Hall of Famer. Not to mention the 1 regular season MVP got completely overshadowed by a horrible Super Bowl performance. And then, of course, Kurt Warner had a better career, too. And then Jeff Garcia, the next one, no. I mean, Jeff Garcia had a few good seasons, but when did Jeff Garcia ever truly dominate over Kurt Warner, Ben Roethlisberger, Drew Brees, Peyton Manning? Come on. Look, Jeff Garcia, I liked what he did with the Eagles in 06 when he filled in for McNabb. He helped lead the Eagles to the playoffs. And look, Jeff Garcia was a good quarterback, but he was never a truly elite quarterback. Nah. Next one, Eli Manning. Let's face it, Eli Manning's going to get in because of those 2 rings. And particularly how historic that first one was. For historic reasons, Eli Manning's getting in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But I don't know if this will be this year. Maybe it might be this year. Maybe it might not, but I'm not sure. Eli Manning, though, will definitely get in at some point because of those 2 rings. And because he did make a few Pro Bowls outside of that, so yeah. The 2 rings, though, get him in the Hall of Fame for sure. And then Donovan McNabb. I think McNabb, he has a case for getting in for sure. 6-time Pro Bowler, led a Super Bowl run, started in 5 conference championship games. But I think the one thing missing that's going to turn away Hall of Fame voters for McNabb is the fact that he doesn't have a ring. And don't get me wrong, as an Eagles fan, I'm biased, of course. I love McNabb as a quarterback, but I just realistically, I want to say yes as a fan, but I don't think it's going to happen, or if it does, it'll be years from now. I'm just not sure about it. I think he's going to fall short with some voters. He's rightfully in the Eagles Ring of Honor, but I don't know if they're going to let him in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And then next one, Steve Air McNair. It's a shame because we think about it, Steve McNair should still be with us on Earth. He should be. McNair should still be with us, but he's not. And David put, yep, Randall was a great punter too. You're right, but unfortunately, he didn't have enough punts to be considered a Hall of Famer. But yeah, you're right. He was a great punter too. He would have been the perfect. If our punter ever got in, like if we would have had a situation where our punter got injured, was out for a few weeks, you could have just thrown Randall as the emergency punter for a few games as well. Oh yeah, definitely. Then you got Steve McNair. Like I said, it's a shame what happened, the tragedy with McNair. We love to honor McNair every chance we get, and he's I think he's similar to McNabb. He falls on the cusp, but because he doesn't have a ring, I think he's gonna fall just short of the Hall of Fame. He's gonna fall just short. Like I say, his jersey retired by the Titans. He's in their Ring of Honor, rightfully so, but I don't know if he's going to quite reach the Hall of Fame. I think he's going to fall just a little bit short. Next one, Phillip Rivers. Rivers is another one kind of in that same tier. I mean, I think he was one of those guys that just needed a ring to get in. I think he's going to fall short with voters for that reason. I mean, Rivers, like I said, a good quarterback, very good quarterback for the San Diego, now Los Angeles Chargers, but I think Hall of Fame voters are going to look at the fact that he doesn't have a ring or even a Super Bowl start and just say, and they're not going to be sold on it. So I think for that reason, I think he's going to be a no. I think he probably should get in, but I don't think he's going to. I think he's going to get ruled out for that reason. They're going to look at it and say, nah, I don't know. But Phillip Rivers, he's on the cusp, though. To be fair, he does fall close, but I just don't know if he's going to actually get the deal, though. I mean, he might eventually get in, but I think Phillip Rivers, I would like to say yes, but I just don't think it's going to happen, though. I think they're going to say no. Give me 1 minute. Sorry about that, folks. I had a real quick call I had to answer. But yeah, so back to what I was saying. Phillip Rivers, I mean, you look at his career numbers. He's got all the Hall of Fame accolades except an MVP and a Super Bowl. Total career yards, he's got that accolade. Touchdown passes, he's got those accolades. Pro Bowl nods. Phillip Rivers has all those accolades to be a Hall of Famer. So Phillip Rivers is a guy, I think, he could very well get in the Hall of Fame. He's got the accolades for it, but I just don't know if that's going to actually work out or not. I think Hall of Fame voters are going to look and say, no. So I'm afraid he's going to fall a little bit short of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, despite his accolades. And so as much as I want, and I am a fan of Phillip Rivers, I think he's going to fall just short. I think if Phillip Rivers had started in Pittsburgh and had a ring, say, that probably would have been his best opportunity at getting a ring. But I just don't think it's going to happen, man. Hall of Fame voters are going to look and say, nah, I don't see it. But moving right along, the last quarterback nominee is Alex Smith, which Alex Smith, no, not at all, man. Because look, I understand people love the Alex Smith comeback story. And yes, he was a good quarterback for Kansas City, but come on. In no way, shape, or form was he a Pro Football Hall of Famer. Come on. You got to remember with Alex Smith. Remember, early in his career, he was looking like he was going to be a bust. I mean, it looked like early on he was going to be a bust, wasn't going anywhere with his career. And guess what? Ultimately, he did turn it around, to be fair. He caught on the right time when he had John Harbaugh as his head coach that first year in San Fran. He turns it around. He had himself a good season, but he's not getting in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He didn't do enough over the course of his career to hit that. And like I said, good quarterback, but not enough. Because remember, early in his career, first 3 seasons in San Fran, he had more interceptions than touchdown passes. In no way, shape, or form is he getting in the Pro Football Hall of Fame based on that. And then it wasn't until, year 6 that he really got going. And even then, with the good years of his career, a lot of that was filled with wild card exits. In Kansas City, remember, they got to the playoffs. They made it there, but when they did make it, ultimately, they fell short. And the wild card round against Indianapolis, they flamed out after the big lead and blew that big lead. And guess what? The Colts came back and won it. You had that, strike 1. Strike 2. You had, it was the game, you had that. You had strike 2. It was the year against New England. Then they lost to the Steelers. Remember, all they did was, Steelers only scored field goals against them that divisional round game at home in 2016. Then 2017, the blown lead against Tennessee. He ultimately gets replaced. I just don't, those are going to be the knocks against him for a Hall of Famer. I don't see it. Skipping ahead to running backs now. This is a long list. So I'm just going to read off some of the guys, give you a list of, and I'm going to weed out some people I just don't think make the cut. Potential running backs got Sean Alexander, Mike Allstad's fullback, Tiki Barber, Larry Centers, Jamal Charles, Corey Dillon, Warwick Dunn, Arian Foster, Eddie George, Frank Gore, Priest Holmes, Steven Jackson, Chris Johnson, Thomas Jones, Jamal Lewis, Marshawn Lynch, Shady McCoy, Eric Metcalf, Lorenzo Neal, Fred Taylor, Ricky Waters. I'm going to start off there with some guys we can cross off. Tiki Barber, not really. Arian Foster, no. A guy, Priest Holmes, unfortunately his peak was too short. Thomas Jones, nah. LaShawn McCoy, maybe, but I don't think he's going to be first ballot. Eric Metcalf, not sure. And Ricky Waters, I'm not really sure about that. To me, running backs, like the standard for running backs for Hall of Famers would be, and then Jamal Charles, no. Warwick Dunn, good, but I don't think so. Like, if you're talking running back standards, like Adrian Peterson's the modern standard for a Hall of Famer, based off what he did on the field, not necessarily off the field. Like, that would be the standard for a Hall of Famer. Adrian Peterson. You got him. And you got, like, LaDainian Tomlinson, 21st century standard for a running back. I'm not looking around. I don't see, when I look around, I don't look at, say, let's say a guy like, what's his face? Who am I? Oh, his name's escaping me. Like, I don't see a guy, like you said, like I see a Jamal Charles. I mean, he had a nice few years, but he wasn't truly one of the premier running backs, and he wasn't, not Hall of Fame worthy. A good back, but not a Hall of Famer. I don't look around at him and say, oh yeah, there's a Hall of Famer. I don't look around at, say, somebody like that, or I don't see someone who had a few good years, but never was really dominant as a Hall of Famer. Like a Brian Westbrook, no. Good player for the Eagles, but he never truly was great enough to be a Hall of Famer. Like Hall of Famers amongst those guys, I could see maybe Sean Alexander, maybe, but I don't know. Like Mike Allstott, even though he was a fullback, I could see him because he was elite. He had a few elite years. I could even see a Frank Gore, maybe. Frank Gore could potentially be a Hall of Famer. Even Marshawn Lynch, especially nowadays with the running back shelf life being short. Here's the thing you got to consider. As the years go along, More running backs that had shorter peaks are going to get consideration for the Hall of Fame. Like a Marshawn Lynch. I could see him getting the nod because of how dominant his peak was and his star power. Or maybe Chris Johnson, CJ2K. I consider Chris Johnson a Hall of Famer. I do. I consider him a Hall of Famer. I would consider him. So I consider him a Hall of Famer. Someone like a Chris Johnson. I would consider another guy. I consider Hall of Famer. Maybe somebody like that, or Steven Jackson even. Even though he had his peak wasted on the Rams, you look at what he did. He was kind of the original beast mode for a while. He was the best part of that Rams offense. I would even consider maybe a Steven Jackson a Hall of Famer. I could consider them. I even maybe go along the lines of like those guys. I don't know, like Adrian Peterson. He's the modern standard for a Hall of Famer. Easily, hands down. I'm looking at those guys as potential Hall of Famers. But I don't. So that's my standard right there. A lot of running backs right there considered potential Hall of Famers. Lorenzo Neal, maybe Lorenzo Neal, but he might have to wait a while. And then I look at wide receivers. You got the wide receiver list. You got Anquan Bolden, maybe. Donald Driver, I don't know. Larry Fitzgerald, yeah, I could easily. Fitzgerald, definitely. Torrey Holt, I'd say yes. Torrey Holt's long overdue. He's someone that has waited a long time for his Hall of Fame nod. You look at how dominant he was for the Rams, particularly during that greatest show on turf. He played a significant, I repeat, significant role in them in their run and in them making two Super Bowls. And even then, the first couple years after that, they were still kind of in the mix after that second Super Bowl appearance against the Patriots in Super Bowl 36. But they were still a good team. And Torrey Holt played a huge role in that offense. He consistently dominated, had multiple 1,000-plus yard seasons. I'm like, oh yeah, Hall of Famer for sure. Definitely consider this guy a Hall of Famer first for sure. Torrey Holt should definitely be in. Larry Fitzgerald, first ballot Hall of Famer for sure. Basically a generational receiver. And you saw when the Cardinals did make it to the playoffs, which wasn't often, sadly, for Fitz, but when they did, he dominated. I remember very good and well when my Philadelphia Eagles played them in that conference championship game in 2008. Fitzgerald took over and pretty much ripped out Eagles fans' hearts with that dominant performance and helped the Cardinals clinch a berth in Super Bowl 43. And just not that, but that whole run, too. Larry Fitzgerald, that 2008 run, bro, with all due respect to Kurt Warner, but Fitzgerald played a huge role in that Cardinals Super Bowl berth. Without him, the Cardinals don't make that magical run to the Super Bowl. So with all due respect to Kurt Warner, he deserves credit for that run too. But I truly say without Fitzgerald, it don't happen. Without Fitzgerald, there is no Super Bowl run. I'll come out and say that. So Larry Fitzgerald gets huge nods for me, huge props for me for that Super Bowl run. Because without him, it don't happen. Pretty much plain and simple. Oh, man, but yeah, Larry Fitzgerald to me, definitely a first ballot Hall of Famer. Hands down, he's going to be the lead guy for that class, no doubt. I got him, Torrey Holt, and this is one that's kind of debated, but I'll even go with Chad Johnson too. Because you look at his resume, I think he does make the Hall of Fame. He's got 6 Pro Bowls. He consistently dominated, and not to mention too, he was their biggest star at wide receiver in the late 2000s, entering the early 2010s with the Cincinnati Bengals. But I think what's going to turn some voters away is the way he flamed out at the end of his career. He had that disastrous stint with New England that one year, and then he was going to be on the Dolphins, but he had that off the field incident with him getting arrested that pretty much prematurely ended his football career when he may have had about 2 or 3 more years left. But at the same time, I look around, I'm like, come on, this is the same NFL that let Ray Lewis get in first ballot. Not that Chad Johnson was better as a receiver than Ray Lewis as a linebacker necessarily. I'm not making that comparison. What I'm saying is you have to consider, I would still have to consider Chad Johnson because of how good he was during his peak and the fact that he flat that, he was a huge star too. So there was the money factor as well. Chad Johnson, so I would say that right there. And David says Chad Johnson was solid. Another guy, maybe Anquan Bolden, I would give some love to as a potential Hall of Famer. He's one of the finalists. I would consider giving Anquan Bolden a nod. I mean, he was pretty dominant for the most of his run. He played a role in 2 Super Bowl runs. He played a role in the Ravens 2012 win. He also played a role in with the Cardinals. He was there for that Super Bowl 43 berth. I would consider Anquan Bolden might get. I think he's more Hall of Very Good, though, too. He might get in, but maybe not. Like I said, Torrey Holt, I'll definitely go with. But the main 2 on this list, I go definitely say Torrey Holt and Larry Fitzgerald for sure. At some point, deserve to get in. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about those 2 guys. And then I'm looking at the rest of the list. You have Brandon Lloyd, nah. Derek Mason, maybe. Steve Smith Sr.'s. Steve Smith Sr. should get in, definitely. No, there's no Roger Craig. But there's another one who doesn't get love, who gets outshined by some of his stalwarts. Another one, who else on those? You got Herman Moore. Herman Moore was a good, kind of an underrated one, but I'm not sure about Hall of Famer. But you do have Steve Smith Sr. I think Steve Smith Sr. should definitely get in at some point. He was a guy who consistently was a factor in the offense, consistently a go-to guy in the passing game during his run with the Panthers and during that brief stint, those couple of years with the Ravens. So I got to go with Steve Smith Sr. for sure as a Hall of Famer. Well, the rest of the list, potential nominees, includes Jordy Nelson, no. Donald Driver, no. Wes Welker, no. Roddy White, no. Reggie Wayne. I'm not sold on a guy who mostly spent his career as a number 2 guy in the Hall of Fame. I don't see it. Jimmy Smith. Jimmy Smith, I don't. No, I don't see it. Good. Rod Smith, no. Musha Muhammad was a good receiver, but he's mostly remembered for being a number 2 guy in Carolina. I don't see that him being a Hall of Famer. Don't get me wrong, Muhammad was a good receiver, but no. Tight ends, we got Vernon Davis. I think Vernon Davis has a shot. Zach Miller, Greg Olsen, Wesley Walls, Delanie Walker, and Jason Witten. The 2 main guys right there, I'm going to say off the top of my head, Vernon Davis, Jason Witten. Especially Jason Witten. Because he was for a while considered a top tight end. He was regularly right behind Tony Gonzalez as the number 2 tight end in the 2000s. I'd guess, Jason Witten is definitely a Hall of Famer to me. Vernon Davis, I think Vernon Davis may get in, but he might wait a little bit. But out of the guys there, I think Jason Witten definitely, Vernon Davis, and the other guy who has a shot. You got offensive linemen, you got 22 nominees right here. Got Willie Anderson, Mac Burke, Lomas Brown, Reuben Brown, Ryan Cladley, David DeCastro, Jahir Evans, Jordan Gross, Ryan Khalil, Olin Kruzut, Nick Mangold, Logan Mankins, Tom Nallen, Marquise Pouncey, Jeff Saturday, Josh Stinton, Joe Staley, Brian Waters, Richmond Webb, Eric Williams, Steve Wisniewski, Marshall Yanda. Out of those guys right there, I think the best shots, maybe I could see Jeff Saturday having the best shot out of those guys. Because, especially in this one, you got 22 offensive linemen. Like, look, you're overloading the room with potential Hall of Fame nominees. And this is the point where we just get to the kind of, let's just go through the list and see who I think's cut out. Defensive linemen, you got John Abraham, Geno Atkins, Jarrell Casey, Elvis Dumerville, sir, Leroy Glover, Robert Mathis, Haloti Nagati, Jay Ratliff, Simeon Rice, Justin Smith, Ted Washington, Vince Wilfork, Kevin Williams. Simeon Rice, I could see maybe getting a nod. Robert Mathis, I could see out of those guys. Vince Wilfork, maybe. But then it's, again, not every good player, not every Pro Bowl player is going in the Hall of Fame, okay? Look, we're not just going to put good players in the Hall of Fame. You want to put the truly elite of the elite. Like when I look at this list, quarterbacks, Drew Brees, for sure. Eli Manning, potentially, based on those rings. Running backs, Marshawn Lynch, I could see. Mike Allstott, for a fullback, even. Even Chris Johnson, I could see, but a lot of guys that were just good, like Tiki Barber. Look, Tiki was good, but I'm not considering him a Hall of Famer. Priest Holmes had a few good years. I'm not considering him necessarily a Hall of Famer. Corey Dillon was good, but I'm not like, oh, he's getting in over Adrian Peterson or LaDainian Tomlinson or Marshawn Lynch. I'm just not going there. Like, tight ends, like Zach Miller, Greg Olsen, good, but I'm not considering them Hall of Famers. Brandon Lloyd, Mushi Muhammad, Jordy Nelson, good receivers, but not going in the Hall of Fame. Not over Larry Fitzgerald, Torrey Holt, or Steve Smith Sr. Nah. And then you move on to, like, linebackers. Let's take a look. You got nominees. Navari Bowman, Lance Briggs, maybe Lance Briggs, but even then I'm kind of iffy. Teddy Bruschi, good, but I'm not going to, again, we're not going with everyone who's just because they're good. You got Thomas Davis, James Farrier, London Fletcher, maybe. James Harrison, I could see that. AJ Hawk, no. Good, but not great. Luke Kingsley, no. Clay Matthews, again, good, but I'm not going Hall of Famer. You got Takeo Spikes, Terrell Suggs. Terrell Suggs might have a case, but he's overshadowed by Ray Lewis and Ed Reed on that Ravens defense and Lee Woodall. Like, look, a lot of these guys, again, here, you got some good linebackers like Teddy Bruschi, AJ Hawk, but again, I'm not going Hall of Famers. Now, let's move on. Defensive backs. You got Eric Berry, Cam Chancellor, no. Nick Collins, D'Angelo Hall, I don't know. Rodney Harrison, one of the better safeties in NFL history, but I'm not sure if he's going in the Hall of Fame yet. New England Patriots, Ring of Honor, but I don't know about Hall of Famer. James Hasty, Carell Lake, Alan Rossum, no. Asante Samuel Sr., maybe, but I'm not sure. Patrick Surtain, Earl Thomas, no. Charles Tillman, yeah, Charles Tillman definitely has a case one day. Maybe he has to wait a year or two, but I could see that. Troy Vincent, okay, I could maybe make a case for Troy Vincent, particularly for what he did with the Eagles. Adrian Wilson, Darren Woodson, I don't know. Charles Woodson, definitely, but Darren, I'm not sure. Kickers and punters. Out of this whole list, there's only like one guy I consider that could have a shot. That list is David Akers, Gary Anderson, Jason Hanson, John Casey, Adam Vinatieri for kickers. Out of all those kickers, maybe Vinatieri. Maybe, but even then, I still don't think Vinatieri's going to get in. Like I said, out of all those kickers, he has the best shot, but I still don't see him getting in as a kicker. Then you got punters, Sean Landeta, Shane Letcher, nah. And the thing is, when I look at this list of potential Hall of Famers, to me, I feel like the Hall of Fame voters, my takeaway is the Hall of Fame voters are bored and they're looking for something to do with their time. They are. Because there's a lot of nominees here that fall into the good or pretty good tier, but no way, shape, or form do they realistically fit the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Like Alex Smith. We got to remember, Alex Smith at one point was considered a bust. Remember, it looked like going into it wasn't until the 2011 season that he finally had a good season. And then it really was his best years really were in Kansas City. We remember Alex Smith more for Kansas City. I remember more Colin Kaepernick taking over and the 49ers making a Super Bowl run behind Kaepernick than we do Alex Smith for his role in San Fran. Alex Smith is more remembered as being a bust in San Fran. And more so for being a good fit with Andy Reid as his coach. And even then, during those good years he had with Andy Reid, he had some good seasons, but their ceiling was the wild card round or the divisional round if they had an easy first round matchup or if they happened to get a first round bye. So I'm not considering Alex Smith's peak for just getting Kansas City to the playoffs consistently or having a winning record Hall of Fame worthy for a handful of years when you look at his overall body of work. No, not at all. Kansas City Chiefs Ring of Honor? Well, sure. But not the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Like, that'd be like saying Matt Hasselbeck. Now, look, Matt Hasselbeck was good for Seattle, but not a Pro Football Hall of Famer. Or then I look at a guy like, Phillip Rivers, I think if he would have maybe been, like, say an alternate timeline where those three, Eli, Ben, and Roethlisberger go to different teams. Say Rivers goes to Pittsburgh, he wins a Super Bowl there. Maybe in that scenario, Rivers gets in the Hall of Fame. And I think if Rivers went to Pittsburgh, there would have been a little more stability in the locker room. Rivers could have handled that better than Roethlisberger. But reality is, Phillip Rivers unfortunately never got the chance to go to a Super Bowl and never went. I think he's going to fall short because of that. But give me 1 second, folks. I'm going to mute the microphone. I'll be right back. I'm back now. I just had to use the bathroom for a second, but I'm back to it now. Alex Smith, like I was saying, not a Hall of Famer. Not when he was looking like a bust early in his career. Jeff Garcia, no. He had like 2 good years in San Fran. Then he toiled as a backup for a few years. He went to the Browns. Remember, Jeff Garcia was abysmal with that one season with the Browns. And then he was with the Lions for a year with Joey Harrington. Kevin Jones and that back when the Lions were a joke. Then with the Eagles, he helped lead a playoff run, but he only started for the later stretch of the season. They had that one year the Bucks made the playoffs behind him, but is a few playoff runs really enough for a Hall of Fame nod? No. And don't get me wrong, I actually like Jeff Garcia as a quarterback, but just because I like them and I was a fan of them does not make you a Hall of Famer. So those are several examples of I feel Hall of Fame voters are bored, so they're just stacking up the list of potential nominees just to give themselves something to do. That's what I feel like is going on here. They're just looking to buy time. They don't really have a lot of work going on right now, so they're trying to give themselves some work to fill the time, basically. Basically, I feel like this is filler for them. They just stack the deck with a list of potential nominees. See what can happen. And that's where I think they're at right now. Man, but I'm trying to stretch this thing out to an hour, but I'm looking for something to say. Not really. Don't have anything to say, man, but I'm kind of glad I'm not on that Hall of Fame voter list because, like I said, they just bored out their mind looking for some things to vote on. But while we're still on the subject of football, we got 2 Monday night games tonight. They don't look necessarily like the most interesting games in the world. I mean, hopefully they'll at least be competitive, at least give us something. Because you got, the Jets and Dolphins. And then you got Broncos, Bengals. I'm not really sold on those 2 games. We'll just see what happens there. But with that being said, though, folks, tomorrow, give a real quick plug. Tomorrow, 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on my channel and the Hardcore Sports Network. Your boys hosting episode 28 of the 3-Point Blitz. We're going to break down the Week 4 games, go through the winners and losers, and the key events throughout the week. So that's going down tomorrow, 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Nikki Stees channel and the Hardcore Sports Network. Then at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, exclusively on the Hardcore Sports Network, we'll be hosting Week 5 of the NFL Pick'ems. We'll go through the Week 5 matchups, some potential injury reports, breakdown of the main games, going through some of the potential winners and losers there. So that will be on the agenda for tomorrow for my 2 live streams on Tuesday. So I'll be on the lookout for that one. So with that being said, that's all I got for today. Hope you enjoyed this discussion. It was a nice little discussion to come on here, go through some of the main people that I think are Pro Football Hall of Famers, who I think is, who I think isn't. So I hope you guys enjoyed this discussion. David, thanks for stopping by in the chat. Always appreciate your support. Always appreciate you stopping by. So with that being said, guys, I might drop a YouTube short or 2, or I might share or something, but probably not going to be really active on YouTube the rest of the day, so might be a little bit, but hey, got some other life-related things to take care of. So with that being said, if I don't stop by on YouTube the rest of the day, have a great rest of your day. I'll definitely catch y'all tomorrow on the 3-Point Blitz, 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So that being said, it's your boy Nikki Stees signing off, y'all. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch y'all tomorrow in the chat on the 3-Point Blitz.